As we share a yarn today, we honour the stories that have been told on this land for thousands of years and acknowledge the Ngunnawal people as the traditional custodians of the land we're recording on. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Since the last time, 4 years ago, I've learned so much. Since the last games, how to prepare myself mentally, physically, all the right cues and stuff. I'm so confident.
Safe, fair and inclusive sport should be how sport's delivered in Australia, and whoever's delivering it should never compromise on those three things.
Unfortunately, when you've got a disability, you kind of know that you're a little bit different to the average person, but just a bit different to everyone else that you're with in that school. It tends to hit you a little bit.
Can't be what you can't see is a sort of a quote in that sort of space, and sport has the ability to change the way people look at people with disabilities. And sport also has an ability to change the way people with disabilities think and feel about themselves.
The best thing about para-athletics, someone could absolutely come from nowhere and instantly is one of the best in sport. It's kind of the thing with para-athletics that I've always seen, and I don't mind that. It kind of always makes you want to train a bit harder.
Welcome back to Onside and our Commonwealth Games podcast series from Clean to Gold, the road to Glasgow 2026. I'm Tim Gavel. Joining us today, Australian para-athletes Jaydon Page and Richard Nicholson. Jaydon is one of Australia's rising para-athletic stars, a Canberra-based T47 sprinter. Jaydon made his Paralympic debut as a teenager and claimed silver in the 100 metres in Birmingham. That was in 2022, and he continues his journey now towards Glasgow 2026. Richo is a five-time Paralympian and a champion both on the national and international stage. In addition to his Paralympic history, he competed in 3 Commonwealth Games, Manchester, Melbourne and Glasgow. He won silver in the bench press para-sport for men in Manchester, 5th in the discus throw para-men in Melbourne, and he finished 7th in the 1500 metres para-sport wheelchair in 2014 in Glasgow. Outside of Paralympic Games, he's competed in marathons across the world from New Zealand, Korea, Switzerland and New York. Welcome to both of you. And Jaydon, I guess we've got both the old and new here, so I'll go to you first. And how are you feeling about your second Commonwealth Games?
Extremely confident. Extremely confident.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah.
Oh, since the last time, 4 years ago, I've learned so much.
Yeah.
Since the last games, how to prepare myself mentally, physically, all the right cues and stuff. I'm so confident.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear, because I guess you don't want to be going in pessimistic, but you're running well, you're competing well, you're training well.
Yeah, we actually had a comp just a few days ago, about 2 days ago, and pretty consistent to 11.0s in the same day, so pretty happy with that.
Yes. And Richo, your mindset going into your Commonwealth Games, you competed at 3. Were you always super confident going into competition?
Well, I guess I competed in 3 different sports across those 3 games. So as a powerlifter, I was in good shape, and I was, looking for a good result and got a silver medal there. And then in Melbourne, I wasn't as confident because I sort of was quite new to discus throwing. And then in Glasgow in the 1500 metre wheelchair race, unfortunately, Kurt Fernley made me extremely sick. We were both sick as dogs, and I barely made the start line that year. So, that's just the way it goes. But you're going in, you always want to feel as, confident as possible. And I'm envious of Jaydon here. Like, that's awesome. Good luck to you.
Just on your para journey, because I think you were in archery at one stage, weren't you?
I did that as a teenager. It wasn't anything to do with para sport before I got involved.
But it was an introduction to sport, I guess. And
I've always been involved in sport in some way, really. So,
How did you get into para athletics?
Well, my foray into para sport started with powerlifting, and then after about 8 years in that sport, I just saw opportunities in wheelchair racing, and just decided to pursue that, learn some new skills, make some new friends, travel to different places, and race some different races. So, it was kind of natural transition in some ways, and yeah, created a whole bunch of new life experiences for me.
Is it unusual for para athletes to compete in so many different disciplines as you have?
Not really. There's quite a lot of talent transfer happening across sports, and yeah, there's been a number of really successful examples of that. One of the latest being probably Lauren Parker. She's doing very well. Between triathlon, cycling, she went to the Winter Paralympic Games, so she's unstoppable.
Yeah. Well, Jaydon, what about your, I guess, journey so far into para sports? How did it start?
Mine's a little bit of a late one. Most people, most like Paralympians, they normally start around when they're 10 or they get some type of pathway. I kind of started when I was 15. Growing up playing rugby league all my life and football or soccer, whatever you want to call it. Never really had any passion for athletics. I knew no knowledge about para athletics in general. I probably only knew one star, and that was probably Usain Bolt. And when I was 15, my PE coach knew Irina Devosky and said to Irina, look, Jaydon's going to be at a race meet this week. You should probably have a look. He's a T47, be ideal for you. And had a race, and all of a sudden I ran a qualifier to make Tokyo Games 2021.
T47, can you describe the category there for us?
So basically it's a whole arm limb deficiency. Basically, my whole left arm is underdeveloped. I don't have a ulnar and a curved radius. And basically, it's my left arm's completely shortened to my right arm and significantly weaker.
So you compete against, tell us about the T47 category then. What athletes do you compete against?
So basically, the most common T47 athlete that I will compete against is someone that is missing a hand and basically just has kind of like a nump, but still have the physical strengths of what they would have in their biceps, but just no hand.
Yeah. You won the silver medal, as we mentioned, in Birmingham. What a moment that must have been for you.
I was in complete shock because I was only 17 at the time and very fresh at 17. So
you still at school, or you finished?
I was still at school at the time. Yeah, I was actually studying 2 days before the race. So I was pretty nervous. But I had Evan O'Hanlon as my roommate at the time, so he was keeping me in check. So I was actually kind of confident going into that race, knowing that I had someone like him looking over everything I was doing.
Well, he was a very confident runner, wasn't he?
Very.
He was a cerebral palsy runner, wasn't he?
Yeah, CP runner, T38.
Yeah. Rich, I guess it must be heartening to see the next generation coming through and just so excited about competing. And that's what's good about the Commonwealth Games, isn't it? Because able-bodied para-athletes competing in the same event.
Yeah, it's a really unique opportunity in terms of those large multi-sport events to have, a completely integrated team like that. And, I was very excited. In fact, I stayed in powerlifting an extra 2 years than what I thought I would, just to have the opportunity to compete in a unified team like that and go away with the Australian team and compete at the Commonwealth Games. Yeah, it's a great experience and it's a great model.
Well, I know you've been to one before, but I just wanted to get Rich's perspective on what it's like, mixing with all of the other athletes because as you mentioned, quite a unique experience, but what is it like? Do you share experiences with each other?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the good thing is, you have those large dining halls and you're sharing meals with different athletes at every meal. And, I can certainly say that throughout the 3 Commonwealth Games I competed at, all the athletes were very welcoming and inclusive and happy to see the para-athletes there and competing alongside them and, sharing all the training venues. It was a very positive experience for me.
Well, they must have been surprised to see you transitioning from sport to sport to sport. I think, weren't you a track and field athlete last time we saw you?
Yeah.
How you doing, powerlifting?
Anyway, that was my journey. I have to say that, the team members and staff and athletes were all really, really great, and it was just a great experience.
What about for you, Jaydon? You went to Birmingham. What was that experience like?
I actually had a really good experience. I actually met and made a lot of friends on that team, and especially with other countries. A few from Great Britain, even Jamaica, which was the interesting one, making friends from Jamaica. But it was a lot to experience because my first ever games was Tokyo, and we were all separated from each other couldn't speak to other athletes. Dining halls were a no-go for Team Australia for a precaution.
That's during COVID, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly, for COVID. And and we had no fans at the stadiums. So in 2021, so going from that to 2022, where everything's open and you've got constant athletes around you 24/7, it's like one of the best experiences because you go from watching them on TV to now you're sitting next to them at the dining hall. It's an amazing feeling.
So your race, the 100 metres T47, do you know all the athletes that you're going to be racing against?
Roughly. The best thing about para-athletics, someone could absolutely come from nowhere and instantly is one of the best in the sport. It's kind of the thing with para-athletics that I've always seen. And I don't mind that because it kind of always makes you want to train a bit harder. So to what I know of, I'm up against a South African and a Great Britain athlete. One of them is really my truly good mates off the track. So I know roughly about my competition, yeah.
How do you adjust when you get there? What do you do to make it feel like home?
I haven't actually done that much stuff when it comes to making me feel comfortable. I have my PlayStation, just kind of get my head locked into a different world. But apart from that, I'll just keep my routines the same. Walking at night, a nice walk in the morning or a nice walk in the afternoon, kind of just settle my breathing and work on my airflow, my air techniques and listen to music. I'm basically at home.
So, Richard, Jaydon just saying that he's got his PlayStation, but did you make anything feel like home when you got to the villages, whether it be Para Games or the Commonwealth Games?
I didn't really concentrate on trying to make things feel like home, but I would just put some clothes away and just make the room feel as comfortable as possible. And, I didn't really think about, I was away, so I was enjoying being away, I guess, I was enjoying all the experiences. For being somewhere else, I guess that's one of the things that I loved about being an athlete was the chance to go away and be somewhere else and meet new people and do new things and all those competition experiences and things. It's all part of it. Like I never felt like I needed to make it feel homely to relax. This wasn't part of my routine, I guess.
Yes, unlike Jaydon, I guess it is a battle for a wheelchair athlete to travel to somewhere overseas like Glasgow or Manchester, etc. I mean, you've got your wheelchair on the plane. It's accessibility sometimes isn't great, is it?
That's a problem, particularly in Europe because Europe's pretty old. The more historic a place is, the less access is probably available at the time. And even in London, a lot of the when we were there for the London Paralympics, a lot of the train stations still don't have lifts, and we had to catch a train 2 stops further than we wanted to get off, and then because we could cross the platform there at that train station and then come back to where we went to get off. So there were things like that were really challenging to work out, and that's just being in a different city, but you find a way.
Most a relief to get to the start line, I guess. Yeah. What about you these days? Do you still go for a long road?
Yeah, I go out with the wheelchair races most weekends when they're going out on the road. We'll do a 20 or 30K ride, but they'll be in their race chairs and I'll be in a hand cycle that has gears. It's 10 times more comfortable and a lot easier. So I can keep up with them. I can't sit in front of them anymore. I'm not quite fast enough for that, but I can keep up with them on a good day for over 30Ks. So.
Because you're still involved in sport, aren't you, at the ACT Academy of Sport? Tell us about your role there.
Yeah, so I've just started a new role there as the para-unit manager. So each of the state institutes and academy have stood up a standalone sort of para-unit within their organisation, and we're looking at sort of lengthening the pathway a little bit, doing a lot of TID and bringing athletes into that high-performance system a little bit earlier in their sporting journey to try and, I guess, accelerate their development, all in a name of sort of creating a much bigger pool of athletes to draw upon for Brisbane 2032, stronger domestic competition, and hopefully a whole bunch of new athletes across all our para sports.
Have you seen much change in the para scene over the last, say, 10 years? In the lead up to 2032, I'd imagine it is going to be accelerated, as you said, but have you seen the gradual change, or has it been a major change?
Well, I have to say in 94, the federal government put in $54.9 million into parasport, which effectively doubled their investment. And there's been a significant change since then. I guess they've actually called it the Para Uplift Program. And yeah, there's a lot of money going into sport, into the state institutes and academies. We've set up these para units, a lot of money going into classification and things like that. So I have to say it's really been accelerating in the last few years, all with a view to 2032.
What about you, Jaydon? Have you noticed that there is more support for para athletes?
Yeah, like, of course, I'm still 21. I'm still learning a lot what's happened in the past and what's different now. But the one thing that really raised an eyebrow for me, which was really good feedback, in last year for the New Delhi World Championships, we actually we had development spots made for a lot of young debutants to come up and race in the 2025 World Championships, para athletics, and we had about maybe 20 athletes just under age of 20 that made their debut, and a few older than that. So that was fantastic. And the one thing that was big for me to realize was we actually had a para camp in Brisbane last year, and we had about 2 of them where the able bodies, they will probably have about maybe 4 or 5 a year for relays and stuff. We actually had a full para camp organised from Paralympics Australia to actually get to know each other, to get a lot of us in one room and understand who we are, and get to know everyone before we head off to those games. And that was actually a pretty massive thing because I haven't experienced that my whole para career so far in the 6 years I've been here. So that was pretty nice.
Richard mentioned Brisbane 2032. Is that a goal for you? You're 21 years of age now. Do you sort of see that as something where you'd really like to compete in, a home Olympic Games?
I was
Paralympic Games?
I was actually looking forward to competing at the Commonwealth Games in Australia, but that got unfortunately flipped for us. But yeah, no, I'll be in my prime in 2032. I'll be just be 27 at that point. So I'll be 26 when I race. So I'll be fully in my prime, which you couldn't ask more for at our home games. So that's what we've been building for now. It's 2032.
Yeah. We talk about fair, inclusive sport being safe for everybody. Obviously, that's very important, isn't it, for a para-athlete, Richard?
Yeah. Well, I think those should be guiding principles for any sport, able-bodied Paralympic athlete, club athlete. Those safe, fair and inclusive sports should be how sports delivered in Australia, and whoever's delivering it should never compromise on those 3 things. And that should just be the way sport's done in Australia. And, that might mean, well, I guess it's the same for everybody. The rules should be the same. It should be equitable and fair and inclusive. And, that's especially what we need to strive to do. As people who deliver sport, that's what we need to strive to deliver.
In parasport, you really want inclusiveness, don't you? You want to make sure that everybody who wants to participate in sport is able to do so, no matter their disability.
Yeah, absolutely. You should have an opportunity somewhere, yeah.
You feel the same, Jaydon? I guess you may have seen barriers in the past, not sure, but...
Yeah, I mean, this one's the hardest one about para-athletics. Like, trying to get young people or any disabled person into para-athletics or just para-sport in general is actually very difficult. I've come across maybe 6 different athletes that have on doing para-athletics or just any disabled sport in general because they think it's weird or they don't want to be looked at in a different way. Some of them have cerebral palsy. Some of them don't want to be looked at because of their legs. And sometimes I've heard parenting can be hard if you're sheltered. Like, if you shelter their kid before going into sports can be difficult. For me, I was quite fortunate that my parents just chucked me on a motorbike when I was 4 years old. So kind of that fear or anything like that was gone on what people thought and stuff like that. So it can be sometimes tricky for young disabled people in general to get into parasports. It can be actually quite tricky.
Is there a fear of putting yourself out there too? That you don't want to be seen as being different?
Well, you're now kind of opening up the world to seeing you in a kind of like almost in a vulnerable spot, because some people have never seen a T38 sprint or a T36 sprint and see them have a cerebral palsy reaction, like a tense reaction in their body. And people haven't seen that. Some people can unfortunately can be cruel and judge. It's kind of reality of the sport sometimes.
Can sport do better, do you think? To
Always,
Yep.
always. Like I've been quite fortunate since I've been in the sport that parathletics is more, I wouldn't say accepted, but is more recognised with some of the able bodies in the sport, like Joshua Azua Party and Jacob Despard. We're quite good friends with each other, and it's nice to have able bodies that that see what you do, see how you train, know that you train just as hard as they do, and you see the passion that you guys both have for the same sport. That's always really nice.
Richard, you got some thoughts on, I guess, the accessibility and the fact that some para athletes feel uncomfortable at first, but once they get into the sport, they realise there is a support system there for them.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of barriers that can, hinder a person's ability to get involved. But, that could be just physical access to a venue. They might need modified equipment, the cost of that equipment, transport, a whole range of things. But probably the number one, I've been working in this space for 30 years, and the number one common barrier is still the attitude, and that could be, the sport or local coaches just feeling a fear of the unknown, not knowing what to say or what to do, or feeling that they need to know a lot about a particular impairment before they can actually include someone, and that's actually rarely the case. So there's definitely a sort of still a fear on the side of sport, and as Jaydon was saying, some people are nervous about sort of entering an environment where they're not sure of themselves. They've probably done some sport at school, and because of their impairment, they're usually finishing last, or they're not able to do certain activities. So, pursuing sport's not been high on their list of things to do. But one thing I can say is sport has the ability to change the way people look at people with disabilities, and sport also has the way that has an ability to change the way people with disabilities think and feel about themselves. So I think there's huge positives for people with disabilities being involved in sport. It works both ways, and there's more positive outcomes than there are ever negative outcomes. So changing those attitudes and allowing people an opportunity, the people find their own pathway. And, for me, it's changed my life. I didn't start in disability-specific sport till I was 23, and I've been working in it for 25 years at the ASC, AIS, Sport Integrity Australia, now back at the ACT Academy of Sport. I've competed in multiple games, Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games, World Championships and marathons. Yeah, and it's definitely, it's changed my life and changed the way I thought about myself growing up and my role, what I would do in life. So, sports are a fantastic tool for developing people in all sorts of ways.
Is bullying at a young age, is that part of life as a person with a disability?
Bullying was never really a big feature in my life. I always felt I had a good number and good circle of friends. I'd never felt that was a major factor for me, but it's certainly not the case for everybody.
How did you handle things when you were growing up, Jaydon?
Yeah, unfortunately, I had the other page of the script, unfortunately, for that one. All it takes, like, this is my experience, all it takes is one kid in year 2 or year 1 to kind of keep going at a rate to kind of put you down in a way. That's just what kids do. But unfortunately, when you've got a disability and you kind of know that you're a little bit different to the not average person, but just a bit different to everyone else that you're with in that school, it tends to hit you a little bit. And unfortunately, some kids join in on that. And it wasn't until maybe year 7 or year 8 for myself where I did move schools, that I actually got some confidence because I had some people that were more mentally mature, also in years above me that kind of made me feel more almost as like I was acceptable to be around people my age. And that actually really helped me. And they're still great mates of mine to this day. But yeah, unfortunately, there is that type that you can get bullied in school. I know I've been working with Paralympics Australia with 2 of our debutants that have received some type of bullying from their school. So just trying to work with them and try to get them to understand, it's just kids being kids.
Does it give you strength now as a Commonwealth Games representative about to head across to Glasgow? Do you draw on that strength? You've had a fair journey to get to this point.
Yeah, it's been nice. Like what's been the biggest thing for myself is the people that I've had in the Paralympic space and also Olympic space. You know, having a Matt Beckham or Melissa Breen or Irina or an Evan, they've helped me understand it in a mature way and try even. It's not even just about the sport itself. It's actually becoming a better person and helping the others around you. And for leading into Commonwealth Games, as I mentioned before, I was just at a Brisbane camp. I'm the most, I had the most experience at games, and I'm only 21 years of age. We have 28-year-olds or 24-year-olds, and we have a lot of under 20-year-olds there. So just giving them any type of experience that I've gained from others that have won gold medals at a Paralympic events or World Championships or a Com Games has been actually really special.
And what advice did you give to them?
Oh,
as the elder statesman in the team.
Oh, okay. So the first one for me, there was two of them that was talking about running a particular time. And I said, you can't stress about something that you can't achieve right now. Like you're not racing today, you're not racing tomorrow. You know, you can't stress on a time that doesn't exist yet. You got to go out there, focus on what you're going to do, and give yourself the best opportunity to achieve that time before you can talk about times. It's I remember I used to do it, and then Evan O'Hanlon kind of gave me a smack up the backside, said, do not talk about times. It will happen.
And get rid of superstitions.
Yep.
That was advice that somebody provided to us the other day, said, whatever you do,
don't start something.
Yep.
Don't start something you've got no control over. Richard, it must be heartening to hear some of the advice, I guess, that we're hearing from Jaydon, but also, you know, his perspective on things. And it's really important, isn't it, to have some perspective, because otherwise if you go in just saying, I'm going to win and going to do this and going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all a learning curve. You know, I can think back to I had some great mentors when I sort of entered Paralympic sport, and particularly the athletics, you know, Louise Savage. She was the one who decided to get me wheelchair racing, and, you know, she had some great words of wisdom because she was very experienced at the time. And I think it's just, you know, young people do look to others who've had more experience, and just finding ways to calm the farm, if you like, and just to get to concentrate on the process rather than try and focus on a result, because if you get your process right, the result will come. So, I think, you know, having mentors in teams, whether they're 21 like Jaydon or whether they're much older like myself, I think that's really important for athletes coming through.
I don't know whether it's anecdotal, but I did read somewhere that young people with a disability look to para-athletes more favourably than they would do to able-bodied athletes. I think, well, there's somebody that's got the same disability that I have, and they're out there doing something fantastic on the world stage. Do you think that's a fair comment, because they are looking and searching for somebody like you?
I think that, you know, sometimes you can't be what you can't see is a sort of a quote in that sort of space. And when people, you know, particularly younger people with disability, you know, they can often feel pretty vulnerable, a little insecure. And if they're getting bullying, that's only heightened. But if they see someone who looks like them on television competing against the world best, then that gives them, you know, so, well, my life doesn't have to be this way. You know, I can do whatever I want to do, you know, I could be just like that. So I think it's really important.
Is that the case for you, Jaydon? Do you think you really look at Paralympic athletes doing really well and think, well, you know, that's where I'd like to be?
Well, yeah, like going back to what I was saying before as well, like as I was entering into the para scene, I wanted to get an understanding, you know, who am I racing? Who's going to be my idol? Who's going to be my next person I get to look up to? And if I start making teams, how do I gain any type of, how can I be a sponge? Basically, how can I be a sponge? And I think the first race I ever saw was Scott Reardon at 2012. Watched his race, and then I started going to Chad Paris, and I was looking at Evan and just getting so much, you know, information of how they run and how they present themselves. And I started, you know, at the training camps or when I was with Irene, I would have James Turner, Vanessa Lowe, Scott Reed and Evan O'Hanlon all in the same training space as myself. And I just would kind of sit back and just listen to how they talk and how they get themselves ready. It was almost I was watching an able-body and like an Olympian. They're so professional. And that was really handy for myself to have that, to have the maturity and the experience in that scene.
You just learn through osmosis, don't you? Just being there, you pick up things that just become part of your process that you wouldn't have picked up if you weren't in that situation. But, you know, they become part of your process, and that's your natural thing that you do. And you know, it helps you so much further down the track.
Like that couldn't be any more real. Like for exactly what I've gone through. Like I would watch, give an example, from the people I've roomed with, Chad, Paris and Evan, I would watch them, how they even operate in their hotel rooms or how they just make themselves feel nice and relaxed and comfortable with their environment, has really helped me. Just those little things have been so much bigger than anything you could put on the track. It's been,
And now you've got young people looking to you, watching how you eat and sleep and prepare. So how does that feel with you to be that role model?
Well, it's exactly what we just went through in Brisbane. The little fella that I was rooming with in Brisbane apparently idolizes me. And I'm thinking, I'm 21 years of age. I'm not a role model yet. So, and I could see him every once in a while, he'd look over into the corner of where we were sleeping. He'd just see what I'm doing, how I'm organizing myself, and, you know, race day rituals. Or even though I don't have a ritual, kind of just how I psych myself up. Yeah, it's a really nice feeling knowing that whatever I'm doing, it doesn't matter if I'm walking to the bus or if I'm eating or if I'm about to set an alarm to go to sleep, they're analyzing something. And that's kind of nice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah. That's great. Richard, just as a final question, advice for young athletes going across to their first Commonwealth Games, para-athletes in particular, what advice would you give them?
Just enjoy the experience, because it is every Games is a one-off. Every Games is different, and just enjoy it. Try not to get too distracted. Stay focused on what you're there for, but you know, at the end of the day, it's just sport, so enjoy it. You know.
Jaydon, is that the approach you're going to take, just to get across there and enjoy it?
That was kind of a what Scott Reed said to me when I was about to make my debut in 2021. He said to me, mate, you're 16. No one here expects you to win a medal. No one expects you to break a world record. Everyone just expects you to do your job. Just go out there and race. And you're here for a reason. It's because you used to enjoy running, you know, in the backyard or running on the school oval or running in athletics. And now you're here, and it's basically the exact same job.
That's great. Yeah. Thanks very much, Jaydon and Richo, for coming in today and sharing your experience, Richo, and Jaydon, all the best in the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. Really looking forward to watching your race in the T47 100 metres. And Richo, great to have you back in the SEA offices after one of the mainstays here for so many years. Today's conversation is a reminder that success in sport isn't measured only by performance and medals, also built on the foundations of respect, fairness and inclusion, values that help every athlete reach their potential. It's these values that will be on display in the pursuit of sporting excellence in Glasgow. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for our next episode in this Commonwealth Games series, From Clean to Gold, the road to Glasgow 2026.